Hola, hola, hola a todos. Buenos días, buenas tardes, buenas noches. No sé qué hora es donde tú estás y a qué hora tú estás mirando a este video, pero hola y bienvenido a otro episodio de Hablamos Español. Hey, my name is Tasha of Tasha Teaches Spanish, and I welcome you, bienvenido, to another episode of Hablamos Español. We exist, and this web series exists more so to shine a light on those who bring diversification to the world of foreign language learning. So oftentimes, especially as melanated individuals, we don't see ourselves in foreign language learning spaces. So we don't think it's for us, but then other people don't think it's for us either. And that's why when they see that we speak Spanish, they're like, oh, you speak Spanish. How did you learn? A lot of assumptions. And so the platform exists to remind us, right, as folks, and let others know learning languages is for us, and we can do it. And here's proof. So very excited to have with me today Arnelle Jones. It is a shame, que lástima, that it's taken me this long to have her as a guest. Sometimes I forget who I know that speaks Spanish and is melanated. And Arnelle and I went to college together, actually. Arnelle is a few years younger than me. I knew her sister a bit better, but we went to college together, and I've from social media have seen at a distance things she's done and experiences she's had, which she'll share today. But it's just after getting reconnected with her, it was like, why was she not a option a long time ago? But it's okay. Start in. Hey, Arnelle.
Hello.
Thank you so much for your willingness to take out time and do this interview and come on and share your experiences. So first, up to you, the viewer, any guests we have, and by now, guys, I hope this is like episode 27, 28, 29, 30. I hope by now you have an idea of how this goes, but maybe it's your first time seeing the video. So please like the video, subscribe to the channel, but also go back and look at the old interviews. I want you to soak all this up. And as you will see at the beginning with the guests, we always have a conversation in Espanol. I was talking to somebody last week and they told me, I saw your videos, but they're not in Spanish. No, because I want this to be for anybody. I don't want, this is really for somebody, I guess. No, it's for anybody, but especially if you're a beginner and you just kind of need some encouragement. I don't want to, have a full conversation and then you're running off. Like, I don't know what this is. So no, we're not going to have this whole interview in Spanish, but the guest always has their introducción in Espanol. So this gives you, the viewer, an opportunity to, test out what you know. When we have a conversation, what are you comprehending? What do you not comprehend? It's a good little challenge. So here we go. Let me pull up my list of questions. Okay, Arnelle. So sabemos ya que tu nombre es Arnelle Jones. ¿De dónde eres, Arnelle?
Bueno, yo soy de Arkansas, en una ciudad, pues, un pueblito, se llama Osceola. Sí.
Muy bien. Está en el norte, ¿no?
Sí, el norte.
Cerca de Missouri. Muy cerca de Missouri.
Sí, muy cerca, como.
Ok, ¿y qué haces, Arnelle?
Bueno, ahora yo soy una maestra. Yo soy maestra y yo enseño inglés para los estudiantes en secundaria.
Ok, ¿cuáles grados?
Pues el 9º y 10º, sí.
Ok, muy bien. No son los años difíciles, ¿no? Cuando ellos piensan son adultos. Sí.
Exacto. Es como transición, porque todavía tiene un poco de juventud, pero tiene más actitud.
Ay. Sí, yo trabajé como maestra un año, pero yo estaba alrededor de la educación toda mi vida, porque mi mamá era maestra por 30 años. Entonces, pero yo tuve la experiencia personalmente por un año y sí, fue una experiencia.
Es verdad.
Entonces, gracias a ti por tu dedicación y que quieres continuar a trabajar como maestra, porque cada persona no puede hacerlo.
La verdad es que es muy difícil, pero es más difícil como ahora en el tiempo de COVID-19.
Coronavirus.
Exacto, coronavirus. Es muy, Uf, la verdad es que yo no quiero tener yo no quiero representar el año en una manera negativa, pero la verdad es que fue muy difícil
Sí,
para
sí,
las
no,
maestras y los estudiantes.
no es algo negativo, todos de nosotros sabemos, los
Ujú.
padres, los estudiantes, los maestros, todos sabemos que es la verdad.
Ujú.
¿Y por cuántos años has enseñado completamente?
Pues este año es mi segundo,
Ujú.
entonces sí, voy a completar 2 años
Ok,
este
ok.
año.
¿Y, y, y siempre fue tu preferencia enseñar a los mayores? ¿Nunca
Ujú.
querías estar con los bebés, no?
No, es que a mí me gusta tener conversaciones muy
Mm,
profundos y cosas así. Y la verdad, yo no sé si yo tengo la paciencia para enseñar bebés. Me encantan los bebés. No hay nada malo de ellos, pero la verdad es que las personas que enseñan bebés tienen un nivel de paciencia que es como aquí.
y ellos, y depende de la persona, supongo que ellos piensan o piensen que personas como tú tienen más paciencia para trabajar con los actitudes y bla, 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 bla.
Sí, sí, la
Sí,
verdad.
sí,
Pues de hecho es como es una paciencia muy diferente. Para mí es
sí,
más como yo tengo que chequear mi ego muchas veces, porque es muy fácil tener una reacción muy con con
sí,
los teenagers, pero la verdad
sí.
es que tengo que calmarme y
Oh, qué bueno. Pero sí, no, pero te entiendo perfectamente porque sí, y eso, como dijiste, es otra paciencia, porque
ujú,
con los mayores es necesario trabajar con la boca smart
ujú,
mouth, ¿no?
ujú.
Pero es una cosa, pero con los menores es necesario tener paciencia cuando ellos dicen, oh, mi dedo me duele, o él me pegó, o, you know, otra
Exacto,
paciencia, sí.
exacto,
Ok,
exacto.
vamos a continuar. Tus pasatiempos, ¿qué haces en tu tiempo libre?
Bueno, mis pasatiempos favoritos son, pues, hacer yoga. Me gusta leer y, la verdad, escuchar libros, porque no tengo mucho tiempo para hacerlo como así. Y también a veces yo hago ejercicios, pero en esos días soy más perezosa. Pero a veces que sí.
Ok, ok, muy bien. ¿Qué más? Tu familia, díganos de tu familia.
Sí, en mi familia más cercana tengo como 4 personas. Soy yo, mi mamá y mi papá. Los dos todavía están en Osceola. Y tengo una hermana mayor. Ella está en Jonesboro y ella va a ser médica y
Ujú.
está cansada. Y ella y mi cuñado tienen una hija. Mi sobrina se llama Maya y
Ajá.
nosotros.
Ah, muy bien, muy bien. Ok. ¿Qué más? Es la última pregunta, más o menos, son dos.
Ujú,
Tú, y yo sé que es difícil escoger un favorito, ¿ok? Entonces,
ujú.
uno de los favoritos cantantes
Mm,
o latino o de español, del mundo de
sí,
español. Canción,
sí.
canción y cantante.
Bueno, y tú leíste mi mente porque yo iba a decir que pues no puedo elegir.
No, mira, es la respuesta yo recibí cada vez.
Ajá.
Lo, la, pregun la pregunto.
Bueno, yo voy a elegir una de mis favoritas, Celia Cruz. Oh, Celia
La
Cruz.
reina de la salsa.
Ujú, por esto. Y porque me encanta bailar salsa también, ese es uno de mis
Ujú,
pasatiempos.
ujú.
Y una de sus canciones que me gusta mucho en ese sí se llama Azúcar Negra. Y es como una canción
Mm, no sé esta canción.
es muy
¿Es
bonita.
por Celia?
Azúcar negra, muy bonita.
Aquí está. Necesito escucharla.
Sí. Cuando estás arreglándose en la
Okay.
mañana, como... Sí, es perfecta.
Sí, veo las letras aquí. Soy dulce como el melao. Y ella me dice tumbao aquí también, como la negra tiene tumbao.
Sí.
Y una pregunta, y vamos a tener la parte en español. ¿Qué es melao? ¿Es a melon?
La verdad es que yo no sé. Tal vez es algo como español cubano, but I need to look it up.
Yo también, porque ella menciona melao o el hombre en la negra tiene tumbao. Él menciona melao. Y yo puedo ver que no es correcto gramáticamente. Es obviamente un, like it's said in a slang way, but I'm like, ¿qué es? Entonces yo intenté buscar la palabra, pero no encontré
Pues,
una solución.
bueno, es una cosa para hacer en los comentarios. Si alguno de ustedes saben lo que significa melao, dinos en los comentarios. Necesito
Gracias.
también aprender.
Nunca digo al público dejar un comentario, nunca.
Oh.
Gracias. No, gracias, es una buena idea, gracias.
Ajá.
Sí, si alguien ahí sabe la respuesta, díganos, por favor. Okay, el fin. So how went to you, the viewer? Did you catch some things? Did you not? Feel free to pause, rewind. It's definitely great practice. And a lot of people who are just learning or even are at a certain level intermediately say, well, I want to just know basic stuff. So we just talked about a lot of basic things, right? Nothing academic or textbook, really. So yeah, you got it. Let us know how it went. Now, I have told you I may diverge from the list of questions, and I've already thought of like 2 things to ask because I am familiar with you, and I'm so great. It's un placer. It's so great to have another Arkansan. Woo, Arkansas stand up on the program. And I know where you're from, and I know the negativity that comes with that the name from saying you're there. And people ask me this because I don't come from a negative place. I just come from a place that doesn't exist called Falcon. Nobody knows it exists. And people will say, how did you get to this level being from Falcon? So how do you think you, not you're not a little girl now, but your origins, a little girl from Osceola, end up becoming fluent, going to, I'm about to say your business, going to Columbia. We're gonna talk about that. And everything else. How do you think? What do you see in your life's journey that made you see something outside of Osceola?
Well, I think I just generally have been curious about learning more about languages as I was growing up. And I remember when I was in elementary school, my sister was in high school and she was taking Spanish classes. And I remember she had like this online Spanish learning program and she had a book that she used for her class. And sometimes when I was bored, I would ask her, I'd say, Dorica, can I do your play with your Spanish class thing? And she would let me play with the activities that weren't any of her assignments. So I kind of like learned basic Spanish a little bit from her book. And I liked it. I found the process of learning very interesting. And so when I got to high school, I wanted to join I wanted to get into Spanish classes as soon as possible. And we had a couple of issues with like staff in Spanish in my district. And for those of you who are not familiar with Osceola, it's very small rural community in Northeast Arkansas. So, and historically, the school district wasn't doing so well, and so it was kind of hard to staff the school district. And we didn't always have a consistent Spanish teacher. But I definitely wanted to take the classes, and so I took up to Spanish 3 in high school, and then I took Spanish as a minor in college. But I took way more classes than like the minor.
I thought it was your major. It was never your major.
It was never my major. I just took a lot of Spanish classes, and had I studied abroad in college, then I would have been a major, but I just didn't do that part, so I couldn't be a major.
Okay.
But really learning the mechanics and having an opportunity to practice in college was what really gave me the experience and meeting people from different walks of life, and of course the opportunity to study abroad being available. It really drew me to learning Spanish, and so I went to all of the classes. I did all the events, the movies, the conversation clubs. I joined the Spanish Honor Society, Sigma Delta Pi in college as well. And then, of course, when I applied for the Fulbright program and I went to Columbia, that's when I really learned Spanish. I thought I knew it in college, but I didn't.
Yes, so that is a great segue. Let's go ahead and discuss that. And really, in me asking, how you got interested, period, that took another question, which is how did you learn? That was kind of your origins of how you learned. But so let's go ahead and segue into Fulbright. What is that? Why is it a big deal? And in the program, what did you do?
Of course. Well, I'm going to give a little bit of preface before I get into it. So I did not study abroad undergrad at all. I wanted to. I tried to apply for a program to help fund it, but I did not get funding. And so being denied from those scholarship opportunities kind of like it hit me in the self-esteem a little bit. But I remember junior year, late in junior year, I saw an email about something called the Fulbright program where they'll take you abroad and you can learn languages. And I was like, what is this about? So I emailed this wonderful, wonderful human on campus named Jennifer Salo, who's like over competitive scholarships and fellowships at A-State. And I said, hey, what is this Fulbright program about? I saw your email. I can't make the meeting. Can we meet some other time to talk about it? And so when I finally met with her, it's essentially an international exchange fellowship where individuals can represent their home countries abroad. And in my case, I applied for something called the English Teaching Assistantship, which essentially meant that as an American citizen, I could go to another country with the purpose of assisting their English language department in some way, shape, or form. And Fulbright Columbia specifically was for us to work with higher education, like university levels, English speaking programs. And I really was drawn to Columbia, one, because I knew a little bit about Columbia in terms of them having a higher Afro descended population, but I liked the program because it was from August to May, and that kind of mirrored the school year that we had here. And so I was like, okay, if I want to go back to school, I won't have to worry about a delayed start like some other programs. And so I applied. It was a pretty extensive application process. We had to write essays, get references. There was an preliminary interview process with A-State so they could say that, okay, this is a good candidate. And then you had another interview by Columbia so they could say, okay, this is good for a semifinalist. And from there, you became a finalist and you were awarded and placed.
Woo! And this is a government program? Is that right?
Yes. It is it's like a partnership with the U.S. government with different governments abroad. So essentially, I was a government employee when I worked there.
Man, that is beautiful. Because I remember seeing, like I said, I've always observed you from social media and being on social media years ago when we entered the program. Mm-hmm. So, and the way you were being congratulated, it looked like a big deal. But I'm like, what's that? What's Fulbright? So, yeah. But now that you talk about what you went through, my Lord, good job.
Honestly, I didn't know much about it because the year we did it, it was the first year Arkansas State University had ever done it before. Like, we were like the inaugural group. So we were like, oh, okay, Fulbright sounds good. They'll pay for you to go there. They'll pay for your flight. So sounds good to me. I didn't realize at all that there was any weight that Fulbright carried until I went to other environments and people were like, oh, you did a Fulbright grant. And I was like, yes, I have.
And so in Columbia, you already mentioned that you all would work on a university level. So you would go into their college classes and teach them English. What exactly were you doing there?
So the intention was that we were kind of like TAs. We would assist the professor in class. We would, give conversation clubs, and if they needed things pronounced, we would pronounce, read, present, that sort of thing. But what wound up happening was that out of my cohort, well, in total in Columbia, there was about 80 of us. In my specific city, there were 9 of us. And so at the university us 9 worked at, 3 of us were selected to be a part of this full immersion program. This program was geared towards students who wanted to take their English to a new level. So it was fully immersed in English. A lot of those students were graduate students or some, upper level undergraduate students that were seeking to apply to competitive fellowships and scholarships in English speaking countries. So they needed more of a working English class where they could hear English, speak English, write English, present, and things like that. So what I wound up having was my own 4,000 level course in English that I was designing myself essentially and facilitating myself. And it was very strange because I was 22 and everybody else was 22 or older. And so I was like, all right, I am Professor Jones. And someone help me catch a taxi after this.
Okay, that is really cool, and it does sound like a lot of responsibility, not dumped, but I guess given to someone at such a young age. Man, wow, but that's amazing. That is a great thing.
I mean, it had its ups and downs for sure. It was a wonderful experience, but it was also nerve-wracking because I was like, I don't think I should have this much responsibility.
Ooh, yeah. And do you think that kind of helped you or prepared you to, even though it's a different subject, you think that it helped you or be prepared to teach like you do now, just having that early experience with teaching?
I would say yes, because I at least knew that I had the ability to teach. Because before I didn't really know. I've only worked at like maybe a one-on-one tutoring basis before at most, and so I would always wonder like how would I perform in a class of people? How could I manage that? And so it helped me realize that at least I could do it. Like I could think about how the information could be best applied to a group of people and try to, be flexible and understand how different people learn, or like how I can present the information to be, not only just, spoken, but visual and interactive and things like that. So it helped me develop the muscle, or at least have in my mind that I could do it.
Good. Qué bueno. All right. So you already mentioned in your town there were 9 of you all. What town were you in, or I guess what region, and then what town within that region? Where were you?
Right, that's an important question. So we were in a town called Manizales, and it's located in a department or a state called Caldas, which is in like the coffee growing region of Colombia. So that's where you'll see a lot of the coffee farms and things of that nature. And the Colombian coffee you hear about, like some of it comes from those regions. So that's where I was.
And I'm sorry, repeat the name of the town again.
Manizales.
Manizales.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Not really where I wanted to go, but it's okay. It wound up being a beautiful experience either way.
That's good. That's good. And with that, you mentioned Fulbright paid for your housing. So did they also pay you like your monthly stipend, your apartment, your this and that, and all the whole 9?
So really and truly, Fulbright just kind of like slid you a check, and then they were like, "You do what you need to do with that check." And so from there, we had to find the housing ourselves, and find a situation that worked for us, and then you kind of would spend the rest of the money to make sure that you're taken care of. And they paid well enough, definitely paid more than what we needed, and so I was able to afford an apartment and, any utilities and things of that nature, groceries. We were even able to travel throughout the country as well. So it was a pretty good monthly stipend. It's just they didn't really do a lot of front end work. They were like, we're giving you the money. All right, you find you somewhere to live. And
so a person really needs some good financial management with something like that.
Absolutely. Good financial management. Yeah. And there's a lot of niche Spanish that you don't really learn in school that you have to use to find housing. We need to talk about rent. We need to talk about location. We need to talk about, how many rooms, how much, what's my schedule. There was a lot of things that in the moment, you're already nervous to just kind of ask these types of questions in any circumstance. But now I have to think, okay, I need to do this in Spanish.
Yeah. So doing business, it's the difference between having a regular conversation and doing business in Spanish. I remember even me getting a bank account when I was in Spain. That was nerve-wracking. I remember somebody called me, being a foreigner, the government sometimes wants to know who you are while you're there. You have to make appointments. So I was on a phone conversation with somebody, and they were like, "You want to speak English or Spanish?" English,
Please.
And part of me was like, somewhere inside was like, well, Tasha, that's not stretching your brain and blah, 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 blah. But then then I realized this, if I'm handling business, I want to make sure the answers are right. And I'm understanding you fully. So let's just go with my native tongue,
Right.
Handling business is a different thing in Spanish.
It is. And in Colombia, unfortunately, there's like not a lot of English options. So like a lot of times it was just a struggle. I'm gonna be honest with you. I remember once I lost my cell phone and I had to go to the phone company and tell them I lost it. I need another one. They picked me up with a SIM card. I thought like I was gonna cry. I thought the lady that I was talking to was gonna cry. We were both like
Woo! Yeah, I get it. That'll really, and I think that's why people will say, because it was my experience as well, what you said earlier. I thought I knew Spanish before, and I was a major, but I went to Spain, and that's when I got slapped around, and I think that's why, because we get put in those awkward situations. That's why I tell clients, you have to find a way, if you can, because not everybody can go abroad, so you have to even here find a way to be put in situations that aren't comfortable, whether that's going to a restaurant or a taqueria or something. You got to be put in those uncomfortable situations. But when we live abroad, the living is uncomfortable, so we have to like fight and push daily to get through those encounters. And I think that's why it propels us so much, not because it's comfortable, because it's uncomfortable. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely. And after like, and I always say this, after you get like honestly, you know a lot of Spanish if you've studied in school. You learn the grammar, you learn the writing and reading. You know the skills and mechanics of how the language works, but it's a huge confidence factor that's like a problem up front. It's because I felt like for the first 3 months I was on a lag. I felt like my brain would understand what people were saying, but for some reason getting it from here to here was a problem. And I would just sit there and I'd be like, the whole time, like for 3 months, I was a mime. I'd just be, yo, soy. It was bad. But after I finally, like, after the confidence clicked and I was able to, like, trust what I was hearing and my brain caught up, it was much easier to just say what I meant. That's just the hump you got to get over. You just got to keep speaking until you are no longer doubting yourself, and then it'll come out.
That's it. That's good. That's good. It's a good piece of wisdom. What was I gonna say? Oh, and I haven't even really looked at the list of questions yet, because this listening to the Fulbright story is so engaging. Um, Now a lot of times, when I have guests on the show and they've lived abroad or gone abroad, they'll go somewhere where there aren't many of us. But because you already mentioned Colombia has quite a few of us, how was your experience? Because most times, like I went to Spain, so I got a lot of stares and questions, So how was your experience being a melanated person from the US in Colombia? How was that?
Ooh, it was a little bit like a double-edged sword in a way, because on the one hand, I felt very comfortable going most places because if I didn't say anything, people would just assume I'm just Colombian. And so I remember I would get lost a lot walking. And I mean, everywhere I went, I would get lost immediately. But I didn't look like a lost tourist. I kind of looked like just a Colombian person handling their business. And so that was cool to go to new cities and get lost. And I'm just like, oh, as long as I keep, my mouth closed and look like I know where I'm going, no one's gonna know that I don't know where I am. And so that was great. And people tend to not like bother me because again, they don't know that I'm American or that I'm from the US. I think, I could be just a regular Colombian person. On the other hand, there is a lot of negative perception of African Americans, and like we have our own stereotypes and perceptions in the United States, they exist there as well. And so one thing that I experienced, and I remember this, is because a lot of individuals assume that if you're Black in areas that have a more white Latino population, that you're involved with sex work. And so I had a gentleman approach me. I was just sitting eating a Subway sandwich.
You're
He
involved
tried
in
to.
sex work. That's a big.
And so he just tried to set up a date, and and I was like, I'm sorry, I don't know what you're talking about, sir. And he realized that, oh, never mind, this isn't what that is. And so I guess there are still some stereotypes, and there is still a way that Afro-Colombian people are positioned in society, in which they do carry certain stigmas and have to deal with that type of perception as well there.
Did you realize what was going on at first, or it took him walking away for you to know what just happened, or he was using specific words like "let's have sex"? Like, how can you break
It was
that
like
down?
At first, I didn't. It was like halfway in it, I realized. Because at first he was like, "Hello, how are you doing? You're beautiful." Blah blah blah. And I was like, "Oh, okay, thank you." And then he was like, "Well, how much does it cost?" And I was like,
Uh-oh.
"The sandwich?" Like I was like, he was like, "Oh, do I have to talk to your boyfriend first or blah 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 blah?" And I was like, "I'm sorry, sir, I don't." And then he left, and I was like, that's what that was about. Okay.
So how did you had you already learned, or somebody already warned you that that's what happens in that culture, or just that was your first experience learning? You had to learn from
I
the hard
had
way.
to just learn it the hard way. And then, of course, like from that, I kind of did a little bit more digging, a little bit more to understand. And I just know that, that sort of like economy kind of comes from whenever communities are in a lot of poverty. And I think that's kind of what they assume. It's especially in the region that I was from. A lot of people immigrated to that specific region from different parts of Colombia that had high concentrations of African Americans or African Americans that are not doing that are in very disadvantaged communities, or from like Venezuela, which at the time I was there was going through a very big economic crisis, and so individuals would participate in that sort of economy to make ends meet. And I guess he assumed that, oh well, she's black and she's here, that must be why she's here.
Wow. Ay, ay, ay. That is, I mean, it's very interesting idea or philosophy. So, and no one's ever mentioned that. So you think that maybe, I'm not, sex work is everywhere, but is maybe a little more common in Colombia? Or,
And so this is another thing that I learned. I made some friends, and I made friends with other Black people. And I remember one of my friends who lives more in like close to the Caribbean part of Colombia. People would come there for sex tourism frequently. And I think that's just like, especially people from Europe and other countries that, where their money would go farther, they come to the Caribbean to participate in sex tourism. So I think that it's understood that that's what happens.
wow, I need to look up a documentary or something.
We need to get a list together because it's interesting but sad at the same time, because
Yeah,
it's exploiting, because they know that, oh well, I can get it for cheaper here, so they spend,
correct,
but
correct.
it's a fact.
It's an insult, but I get it. That's one thing about it. And no matter the country or no matter the year,
Mm-hmm.
the vagina business is not closing down. So.
Oh no, always a style.
All right, with that, but thank you for that insight. That blew me away a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's see. La siguiente pregunta is, well, I haven't even been going by the list. We talked about that. Okay, so let me ask you this: now that you're back, or you've been back for a while, did you find it hard to keep your language skills sharp? How did you continue keeping it up?
It was difficult. So when I first left Colombia, I had me a little boo. He was Colombian. And so it was easy when I was talking to him, because then I was like keeping it fresh because he didn't know English, and I would just have to keep my Spanish. But since we parted ways and things of that nature, it's harder to find or like organic practice. I mean, of course, you can go to restaurants and try to order in Spanish, but it's still kind of limited because you're only using specific words. So it's difficult for me to keep my Spanish going now, unfortunately. I just try to keep with music, watching TV shows and things like that, but I really don't have a lot of opportunities to speak as much. Teaching Spanish, which I did for a year and a half at my school district, it really helped me to remember those basic grammar mechanics in some ways. But again, my students were learning Spanish, beginning Spanish 1, so like they weren't really speaking Spanish either. So I don't know. I try to, you know, songs and TV shows is about where I am.
Okay. Okay. Good. Good. Well, no, I get it. I get it. It can be challenging, especially when you're in a place that's smaller or there's not a large
Mm-hmm.
population there and things like that. So I
Mm-hmm.
get it. I get it. Let's see. Oh, this is going back, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes. Um, you mentioned that in undergrad you did not study abroad. So you never wanted to do that Costa Rica program that they provided?
I did want to do that program, but it was a weird situation. Like, I wanted to do it. And I knew that Professor Moreno, he would definitely be on board with me. He was really like a champion for me to go. Like he wanted me to be a part of it. And I remember applying for it, and I was like in the process to like go and things of that nature. And the Honors College was supporting me. They were like, yeah, we'll give you a travel stipend. That was great. But I still need to come up with the rest of the money. And so it was then that I applied to those programs. I think it was a grant and a scholarship I applied for, but I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't do my best to apply for those programs. I was kind of nervous. And just a point of real full disclosure, because this might help somebody. I was in a relationship at the time, and I thought I shouldn't leave. So that kind of clouded my vision as well. And I didn't put my 100% effort. And so I didn't get those scholarships. So it was like, it was a missed opportunity because I definitely wanted to do it. Yes. And if anybody's out there like in a position where they're like, oh, well, I'm in a relationship. If the relationship won't last past you studying abroad.
That is great, Arnelle. Thank you for that wisdom. I thank you so much. And then in that case, it was just a month. And you were wondering, but I mean, that's, young in love, whatever. I get it. Because me, when I went, I was done for 9 months, and our relationship did make it. But that's because I came back for Christmas, and he didn't go to visit me. So, but yeah, that's a good point. I guess in general, don't let opportunities pass you by young, just because you're with somebody, because then you may not get the same opportunity older.
Right.
So that's good. Thank you, Arnelle. Gracias. All right, let's see. Let's go back to the Colombia conversation. Some of the favorite foods, some of the favorite dishes or drinks or desserts, whatever.
Okay, so food, definitely. I loved seafood options that were available. I didn't live in a place that was like near seafood at all, but when we would travel to specifically places like Cali or Cartagena, there were some delicious seafood dishes. I have no idea how to replicate them at all, or even like how to describe what it was, but it was just like flavorful, delicious. I still think about it. As far as drinks goes, there was also another like Caribbean drink called limonada de coco with like lime and coconut milk, and it was really good and fresh and delicious. Of course, the coffee was great. Like, not gonna even knock that at all. So many delicious coffee drinks, and trying to think what else. Really good rum also.
Okay. That limonada de coco sounds really good.
Oh, I still think about it, and I wish I could find a recipe that can capture the flavor, but I don't know what they did. It was just good.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's go back to your origins of learning the language. You already mentioned you got kind of an innate interest through your sister's coursework or what she would let you look at. So when you decided to make a minor and dig deeper on the university level, what were some of the things that were most difficult in the beginning?
I think the most difficult thing, one of the first challenges I faced, I realized that some students were taking Spanish just for like, oh, this is required for my major type of thing. And so there were a lot of like really negative attitudes that I would get from some of my classmates. Because I was there like, yeah, it was required, but also I really wanted to learn. And I realized that some people they didn't share the same idea or the same passion in those beginner level classes. And so I felt like there were some people who kind of were engaging with the class in bad faith, and that kind of was just like a type of thing. But on the flip side of that, whenever I got into more of the advanced level classes for students with students who were minors and majors and things like that, I found more engagement, or people who were just trying to learn it for real and trying to do their best. So at the front, it was kind of just like uncomfortable to be around some students who weren't trying to learn. I guess on a more personal level, for me, what was most difficult, I really don't know. Like, I had a good time trying to learn Spanish. I think language learning is just one of those skills that came kind of naturally for me, I guess. So I just kind of enjoyed the journey.
Was there anything specifically about the language, or like verb conjugation was difficult, or remembering certain things?
Okay. Grammar. Okay. Definitely. There was one thing that used to give me the blues, and it was the indirect and direct object pronouns. The like me lo, se le, that would
Headache.
That was like the worst.
Headache.
Yes, that was
Yeah.
like the worst. Also some of the like subjunctive conjugations and the super pluperfect, like all of the real niche grammar, like I would just honestly, I just go around it, to be
Skip it,
honest.
yeah, skip it. It's like, yeah, because you can. One thing about it, I was making attempts to work through that with one of my clients, and as I was learning, and this is recent, because keep in mind I've been speaking for like 10 years, but I've
Mhm.
made it for several years with just three tenses, and you can make it a long time with 3 to 5. But looking back into those intricate ones, you can say the same thing in a different way. So
It
it's like it doesn't matter that to me personally, it's like I don't think it's a necessity. I think it does matter when you're listening to somebody or reading, so you can know what they're like. Why is this conjugated like this? So
right,
you know it's that tense. But for me to convey my message, I can say the same thing if I rearrange some words.
right,
So
exactly.
I get it.
And that's what I learned to do. Like whenever I was in Colombia as well, is that I would think like immediately my mind would say, okay, I would need to use this tense. But like I said, you can find a way around it, say the exact same thing. And honestly, a lot of native speakers don't use these super niche tenses either. The same way
Mm-hmm.
in English, we don't say, oh, with whom I desire to inquire. Like we don't speak like that naturally anyway. So it doesn't it's great to learn it if you want to be an academic or if you want to, to understand those tenses, but if you're looking for Spanish for a utility, you're not going to necessarily hear or say that as much because it doesn't really align with normal common life.
Amen. Amen. Is there anything now that still kind of challenges you about the language?
Of course, I still have some issues with like pronouncing some things, even though it's a lot better than it was before. But I have so many speech problems that it's just I still have to find a way to work around those speech problems and make them apply to Spanish. Oh,
Okay.
I'm sorry. Just a quick story. This is one of my favorites. Whenever I was in Colombia and I was teaching my Spanish speakers, I did a lesson on like common sounds that are difficult for people learning English or people who speak Spanish trying to learn English. What are some sounds they have trouble with? Like for example, the J sound, hard G, things like that are usually difficult. And I remember I was teaching them some type of S sound, and I have like a lisp. And so I was pronouncing the sound and I told them to repeat, and they all repeated it back with a lisp to me. Like an entire class of students going, and I was like, no, that's not what I meant. And I think I had to like find a little video to play the sound so they could actually hear it.
I guess they don't think about us having lisps or whatever. Yeah.
Oh, they just trusted me, and that's great. But at the same time, I felt bad. I was like, oh, no, 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 no.
Okay. You talked about the Fulbright program and how that uh opened up your mind and your eyes to another world. Other than that, what are the ways in which learning Spanish has benefited you personally or professionally?
Personally, it's benefit me because I do feel like I have the ability to communicate with people who may not know English well. And it's really good to be able to say, no, it's okay. We can speak in Spanish if that's what you're more comfortable with, especially in like, at a restaurant or any other like place where a Spanish speaker may work or be. I can feel like I connect with them. Professionally, as a teacher, I teach students who are first generation, citizens, and
Mm.
some of their parents are monolingual Spanish speakers, or they may not have high levels of English. And so, when it comes to those parent conference meetings and things of that nature, I can translate for my team, and I can communicate with those parents to let them feel like they're in the loop as to what's going on as well. Some applications and like jobs and things will ask, do you speak any languages, and I do feel comfortable applying for those positions now, but that's about where it is for me.
You brought up a very good point. Being able to be a bridge pretty much for the parents of your
Mhm.
students. And I'm sure they're surprised. I'm sure your coworkers are surprised, especially where you are. So this is going to segue into another question. Um, Especially coming back home. to the U.S., but then to Osceola in particular.
Mm-hmm.
How were people's responses seeing you speak? And I mean from Black folks, I mean from
Mm-hmm.
white people, and then Latinos as well, because each group's gonna have different reasons to view you a certain way. So white, Black, and Latino, how did each of those groups react when they learned or witnessed you speaking?
I think first for people who speak Spanish, they at first it was confusion at first, like, is this Spanish that is being spoken to me? Like, is that what's really happening? So like the first little bit, it was like, and eventually they're like, oh, okay, so you know Spanish. Oh, you know Spanish.
For real.
Because I think sometimes when people say, oh, I speak Spanish, it's like you probably hear some,
Quiero Taco Bell.
yes, hola, como estas? That type of Spanish is what they probably expected. But then when I came to them with the conversational Spanish, they were like, oh, okay, no, you speak Spanish. Okay, so we can talk, like that sort of thing. For like, I guess when I'm around other Black people and who have heard me speak Spanish, which is not really a lot, but they're just like, I mean, I guess it's just like, okay, that's pretty cool. I always just try to show more Black people, more like native Latino Black people, to show them that, hey, there are these people that look like us and have a culture similar to us, and they just do it in Spanish. And the same, like when I was there, like a lot of like Black Latino people in Colombia, they were like, so you don't have any relatives here or anything like that? Because it's weird to see someone speaking English and be Black in that direction. So I think it's cool to like present that side to either, end of the spectrum. And I guess like, I haven't really been around a lot of like non-Black people and spoken in Spanish, but I mean in the few occasions that I have been, it's always been at first the assumption that I'm only going to be able to speak that little bit of Spanish, but then they see I'm speaking like actual Spanish, they're like, oh, okay, never mind. You actually do speak Spanish.
Yeah, several guests have mentioned that on the show when it comes to European Americans, that doubt or that questioning or things of that nature. So yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And then they hear it, it's like, oh no, never mind.
What was I gonna say to you? Oh, also one thing that I got a lot of when I learned or was started learning, and then of course got fluent. People would say, "Oh, you, especially Black folks, you gonna make that big money. You know Spanish, that's big money." Do you hear that a lot? Or, do you get that as well?
There is that perception, and I'm still looking for that big money.
Amen. Amen.
Like if there's some big money out there that I don't know about, let me know, because I haven't. I found like, oh, there's more opportunity, and there's like, a little bit of a competitive edge to say that I speak fluent Spanish, but I don't know if that's like, oh, we're just waiting for the CEO to be someone who can speak Spanish. I've never had that. I've never met that opportunity.
No, you got
I'm
it.
ready for it. I'm open to it, universe, if you want to give it to me.
I agree. I think a lot of times just depends on the industry. Like, obviously, if you're going to be a interpreter or something for a government institution, well, yeah. Mm-hmm. But it's not just because you come speaking Spanish out the gate, any job is going to give you $100,000. So.
No.
All right, let's see on my list. What is next? What do you recommend to anybody who wants to learn a language? And maybe in this case, can't go abroad, or right now they say they can't, just if you want to learn, and I mean what tips, not just in how to learn it, but maybe even mental things they got to get over, mental barriers. So it's your general advice.
Well, the first one I want to say is to first just speak it. Like, don't think that just because you don't know a certain amount or certain level that you shouldn't speak it. Like, even if it's like trash, like just speak, that's the biggest hurdle. I know I've even made several mistakes at the beginning of this. I make mistakes in English. I make several mistakes at the beginning of this interview in Spanish, but you have to just get past that part and just speak, because that's the only way you're actually going to be better, is if you just do it, because your brain's going to try to catch up. I also recommend, of course, listening to music, but listen to music and read the lyrics so you can hear and see how it works. Like, that's a major key. I would suggest maybe not too much reggaeton, because you're not going to hear a lot of Spanish that you might hear regularly, but definitely some because you want to learn the dialects. But also just, go to as many like events that are culturally welcoming. I know I used to always love the Latin nights at the clubs where they would like, how you play music and you meet some community members who will, be willing to speak with you or even, bust some dance moves with you, teach you a little bit. So also just try to find that cultural connection. But also there's a lot of like, I mean, I don't know, like if you have some spare time, there's some apps you can work on and things like that for practice and things of that nature. Or, invest into getting a personal tutor, I wonder who could be one.
You are funny. You are funny. Thank you for that. You already mentioned one of your favorite stories of in your language learning journey with the lisp and the students. Is there any, as we wrap up, because time goes by so quickly, we're wrapping up. So we're about to do your intro in English so people can make sure they got the information. Is there any other interesting story you want to add to this?
I think one more interesting story was when me and my friend, her name is Amina, we were in Cali, Colombia. We were trying to get to a club one night and we got into a taxi. And so the taxi driver was an older guy and we had no idea where we were going. Of course, we never lived there before. He was asking us directions and we were like, oh, this is the address. And he was like, where is that? And we were like, we don't know. He was like, well, do you turn on this street? And we were like, we don't know, sir. We were like trying to pull up the map, but we had like horrible cell phone service. And he was like, and we tried to like show him the map, like, here, this is where we need to go. He's like, oh, well, I can't see. We were like, you can't see? How are you driving? We eventually got there, but that was an adventure.
Whoa! That is very funny. And in that story was a good lesson or reminder to people, especially younger people, because our generation and to now, people act like we can't survive without phones, especially underneath our generation. But I think it started with us. And I talked to a student not long ago, and he was like, I was like, what if you're in a situation and you need to talk to somebody? And he was like, I'll just use my phone. I don't need to learn Spanish. I just have a translator. And in your story, that was great. You just said we had bad cell service. And that, of course, that can happen in the U.S. We're not as used to that, but it definitely is a risk when you go abroad. Do not think the phone is gonna last, or you could get robbed. Anything.
Oh, and that happens too.
Yeah, that's good. A good reminder. And I'm glad y'all made it to the club with the blind taxi driver.
I hope he made it home.
That I can't speak. Okay.
You did.
Woo, okay, so to you, the audience, let's go ahead and do Arnelle's intro in English. So this gives you a chance to confirm what you think you heard earlier. All right, so. Perdón. So we know your name is Arnelle Jones. Arnelle, where are you from?
I'm from Arkansas in a small town called Osceola.
Okay, muy bien. And your job?
My job, I am a teacher. I teach high school English to 9th and 10th graders.
And we were talking about like the attitudes of that age and how you have to have a lot of patience.
Have to have a lot of patience.
I also, just to clarify to you, the listener, we talked about, I asked her, has she ever considered teaching younger children? And she's like, that's not for her. So yeah, that was that conversation. Your pastimes, what you do in your free time?
I like to do yoga. I like to read. Well, I said I like to listen to audiobooks as opposed to actually reading them. And I said I like to do exercise, but lately I've been pretty lazy.
I get it. I think I definitely have. I can't deny that. Tell us about your family.
My family, it was my mom and dad who live in Osceola still. I have a sister who's going to be a doctor. She's married and they have a daughter who's my niece. Her name is Maya.
Okay. Muy bien. And then the last one was I know there are a lot of options, so I won't say single favorite, but one of the favorite singers and Spanish songs.
I said Celia Cruz was one of my favorites, and the song, it's called Azúcar Negra, or Black Sugar, was the one that I said I liked.
And like I said, I need to listen to that because I consider myself a real fan, and I do not know this, so that's shameful.
The song.
All right, so that is it. Eso es todo. Thank you to you the viewer, for your time. I hope it's been beneficial. Once again, please like, subscribe, share, all those things that every YouTube tip video tells you to do. And Arnelle, I really appreciate you again. You were
Absolutely. It was
great.
fantastic.
You were great. All right.